one episode of the series can turn the entire storyline upside down, and the 10th episode of Season 3 is a prime example. At last, we got some long-awaited answers. For instance, why does Julia need to remember this guy? Why can only Tabitha and Jade see the children? Who is the mysterious person on the other end of the line? Who was really talking to Jim? Why did Sarah kill the man and let the monsters in? How did Martin manage to toss the rope to Boyd? Where did Victor and Eloise hide when they were kids? And what led to the creation of Fromville? Why was Kelly killed in such a strange way? We even found out who visits the cabins at night and who planted the vegetables on the lake's shore. But if you haven't figured it all out yet, you'll definitely enjoy this video. We'll explore all the theories and uncover the mysteries of the series From. And I think it's time to meet the main antagonist, the King in Yellow. But is he truly the ultimate embodiment of evil in Fromville? After all, there are still plenty of other mysterious entities: the ballerina, the woman in the kimono, Clara, Martin, and the boy in white. And of course, Victor's sister, Eloise, who finally appeared in Season 3. The only problem is, no one even noticed. My name is Eugene, and today we'll dive into the final breakdown of the series From. I promise, it's going to be terrifyingly exciting. Let's begin. Thank you for being here with us. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, make sure to do so. It really helps us grow and bring you more great content. A special thanks to those who support our channel not only with likes and comments, but also financially. Your support means the world to us, and we truly appreciate it. So, I think we should first analyze the beginning, the point of no return in this entire story. In the late 15th century, the first European colonists began arriving in America. Naturally, they had to interact with the indigenous peoples, learn from them, and discover their religious and mythological traditions and rituals. One such ritual involved sacrificing children to gain a semblance of immortality. This settlement of colonists fell under the influence of a powerful entity that convinced them to perform the ritual, kill the children, and drink their blood. These children might have been dearly loved by the colonists. According to the boy in white, the children were born in darkness and killed in darkness. This implies they were kept underground. We've seen this place in Miranda's drawings and during Victor and Tabitha's journey. The children were never meant to see sunlight. They grew up in the underground dungeon, and even in such horrifying conditions, they loved and trusted their families. When the time for the ritual came, the children were laid on stones and killed. However, someone didn't want this to happen. This person told the children a story that gave them hope. They turned that hope into roots, which eventually grew into the tree. The boy in white was quite reserved in his explanation, but his account gave us part of the story. To avoid confusion during the breakdown, let's divide everything into sections. Why did it all begin in the late 15th century? I hope you haven't forgotten about the dates on the lighthouse. These dates mark the beginning and end of each cycle. The first year listed is 1506, which is when everything began, and the ritual sacrifice took place. The last year is 1978, which is when Miranda, Victor, and Eloise arrived in Fromville. It was also the year Miranda died. Since the colonization of America started immediately after Columbus discovered the continent in 1492, this settlement must have appeared before the start of the first cycle. Considering the children were at least 8 years old, it means everything began a bit earlier than 1506. The ritual. We've already seen the exact location where this event occurred. When Jade descended into the underground chamber, he experienced a vision or memory. 7 children lay on the stones, looking upward toward a hole in the cave's ceiling that once existed. This might have been the first time the children saw the sky and sunlight. It was at this moment that the iconic symbol, the interwoven roots, was born. This ritual is also depicted on the cave walls, but there are 2 key details to note. 1. The number of monsters. We now know for sure that these monsters were once human. Based on Fatima's account and confirmation from the boy in white, these people killed the children because they were promised eternal life. Assuming each child had both a father and a mother, there would have been 12 adults involved. However, 2 of them were not part of the sacrifice. They attempted to stop the ritual. These 2 are depicted at the top of the root symbol and were likely absent during the sacrifice. When the smiley monster appeared, we saw 11 monsters at that moment. Notably absent were the cheerleader, the grandmother, Jasmine and her friend, the bride, the mysterious woman, the young man with a beard, the baseball player, the maid, the grandmother with a bag, the hefty man, the girl with glasses, the top hat man, the gentleman, and, of course, Smiley himself, who was likely yet to emerge. Thus, the total number of monsters in Fromville is at least 27, though not all of them may be the children's parents. It's possible some are grandparents, which could partially resolve the numbers discrepancy. Alternatively, these monsters might not be related to the children at all. 2. Uboom's role in the ritual. It's likely that Uboom, the entity in the kimono, played a part in the ritual. We know that the series From incorporates elements from Celtic mythology, Norse runes, Inuit Inuksuks, and other cultural motifs that seem disjointed at first glance. However, the inclusion of Japanese folklore does not disrupt this overall system. According to legend, Ubumi is capable of taking newborns and transforming them into massive stone boulders. Additionally, she can aid with pregnancy, even for women who were previously infertile or couples struggling to conceive. This closely resembles Fatima's situation. She was chosen precisely because of her infertility, which ultimately became a cruel twist of fate. In the legends, Ubumi would deceive pregnant women into giving up their children. Therefore, it's possible that, in the distant past, the woman in the kimono led victims to the cellar. There, women gave birth just like Fatima, and Ubumi took the newborns to the underground lair, giving them to future monsters. These monsters, in turn, raised the children as their own and prepared them for the ritual. Thus, the children were born in darkness and never knew their real parents. This version sounds much more realistic since neither Fatima nor the boy in white refers to the monsters as parents. They say that these were people the children trusted. Tabitha, in the past, didn't want to conduct the eternal life ritual, but she simply had no choice. Her child was taken and given to the people living in the underground. It's hard to imagine that a mother and father would be willing to kill their own child, even for eternal life. Moreover, the monsters probably had to sacrifice something as well, such as daylight, just like the children. Every deal with a demon has its price. If there was once an opening in the ceiling of the cave, it's possible that Jade and Tabitha could sing their lullabies to the children without stepping into the territory controlled by the monsters. Detail 3. The Helpers and the Cycle of Reincarnation. We already know that the two people who gave the children hope wanted to save their daughter. We don't know their names in the past, but in the present, they are Tabitha and Jade. In the previous cycle, they were Miranda and Christopher. The souls of these people are reborn in an endless cycle of reincarnation to fix the mistakes of their past lives. They are forced to become prisoners of Fromville each time. This will continue until they save the children. However, saving the children is impossible. Even if they manage to go back to the past, they won't be able to change anything. It's already happened. That's not how time travel works. We'll return to this question later. The most important part of this story is that Tabitha and Jade somehow managed to create the cycle of reincarnation. I think this is what's depicted in the cave drawings. We see that, after their failure, two people holding hands, presumably Tabitha and Jade, went to the Red People, most likely the indigenous inhabitants of this place. They told them everything and asked for help. After that, we see another strange ritual which we cannot yet describe. Below is a symbol that I have always thought of as a sign of infinity, or the eternal struggle between the sun and the moon. But after the show revealed the truth about past life memories and reincarnation, it becomes clear that this is a symbol of the eternal rebirth of souls. It turns out that Tabitha and Jade also performed their own ritual. The indigenous tribes helped them, and they made a deal. Perhaps they did it through the boy in white, just as the monsters made a deal with the Red Entity. The Red Entity is the main antagonist of the series. It has not yet appeared, but its influence is already being felt. The man in yellow is merely the one who controls the repetition of the cycle. I won't get ahead of myself, but we'll return to this question. This is why all of Jade and Tabitha's visions make sense. Remember that strange guy holding a human skull filled with blood? That was the first Elgin. Like the current Elgin, he was tortured, and during the process, his eye was gouged out. He was also manipulated by the woman in the kimono, who forced him to make a pregnant woman drink his blood. This poor soul is showing what happened in the past. He's trying to relay part of the information to Jade. Everything in this cursed place repeats, and the monsters strictly follow the plan. This explains why they kill some people and let others live. How many times could they have killed Boyd? Why did they spare Randall? If Tabitha is truly the main problem, why didn't they kill her when they had the chance? They even knew that an ambulance would arrive in Fromville that night. Why waste time on Randall? I think it's because the time hasn't come yet. There's no need to rush since everything is going according to their plan. Each cycle repeats, and each cycle tells the same story. Perhaps you've forgotten, but remember what Sarah told the father in the basement. The voices in her head also want to leave this town. They told her to stop those who arrived in the two cars. This has happened before. Two cars arrived in town at the same time, and after that, everyone died.
And out near the edge of town, and I would see. They said it happened before, that two cars came on the same day, and everyone died.
She tells the story of Victor's family. On that day in 1978, Miranda and Christopher arrived at the same time. Their cars collided, just like the vehicles of the Matthews family and Jade. That's why Victor draws his mother's van and Christopher's car instead of the Audi Q5 and the RV. These are his childhood memories. Two cars arriving simultaneously mark the beginning of a new cycle. The voices in Sarah's head told her to kill a man, but she didn't realize she was supposed to kill Jade, not his friend. On that day, Jade wasn't driving because he wasn't in a condition to operate a vehicle. Everything must happen in a way that benefits this place. The monsters never kill those who are still needed to fulfill their plan. If something deviates from the intended path, the man in yellow intervenes. Remember when the town was suddenly hit by a storm? What triggered his involvement? Was it the antenna Jim built? Or the fact that Boyd and Sarah progressed too far in their journey? No, the reason was that Tabitha was digging a hole. She wasn't supposed to descend into the underground, and the man in yellow wanted to prevent it. Over the radio, he explicitly said that digging the hole was a mistake. It was after this that Tabitha started seeing the children. She crossed a line, but the boy in white already knew this would happen. He knew that Kevin would let Jasmine in and warned Victor. The boy in white was waiting for Ethan. He also knew that Tabitha would fall into the underground. That's why he sent Victor to help her. All of this happens not because he can see the future, but because it has all occurred in the past. Perhaps saving Tabitha is also part of the cycle. The boy in white knows what will happen in the future because it has already happened in previous time cycles. But this time, he decided to act differently. When the boy in white told Christopher the whole story about the creation of this place and what needed to be done, Christopher didn't believe him. This led to failure. Everyone in the town was killed, leaving only Victor and his sister Eloise alive. This time, the boy in white decided not to intervene directly. Tabitha and Jade must remember on their own, and perhaps this time, they will have a chance to save the children. That's why the boy in white says that everything is changing. He means that this time, in this cycle, events are unfolding in a way that doesn't benefit this cursed place.
Everything's changing now.
Why won't you help us?
Because I tried. With Christopher.
The fourth detail is the children. If they were killed, then who are Jade and Tabitha seeing? Ghosts? Of course not. I believe part of the ritual involves trapping the children's souls in the underground. But then why are their souls wandering around the town? At first, I had a theory based on the idea that Jade and Tabitha saw these children in the underground. I tried to compare all the children shown in the series and noticed that the boy and the girl behind the bars in the underground were never seen in the town. Throughout the series, we only see 5 children. And I thought that in previous cycles, Tabitha had managed to free these 5, while the other 2 remained trapped. However, in the final episode of Season 3, when Jade played the lullaby, all 7 children appeared, drawn to the familiar music. They aren't shown in one frame, but if you count from left to right, the 5th is Tabitha and Jade's daughter, and 2 more stand after her. It's likely that the creators of the series had to replace the older children with younger actors due to aging, as they had no other choice. But they kept Tabitha's daughter, which is why the age difference is so noticeable. The same issue occurred with the boy in white, who also began to age. The production team will have to find a way to work around this problem. In some scenes, they even forget to add the wounds on the children's foreheads, though these wounds were always visible in the earlier seasons. I think the children were killed by being struck in the forehead with a sharp object, as shown with poor Kelly. That was the first time the monsters didn't tear apart their victim. I even suspected that Kelly's murder was committed by someone from Fromville, but after the incident with Randall, it became clear that the monsters don't need to kill everyone or kill in the same way. After the children were struck on the forehead, all the participants in the ritual drank their blood and became immortal. But every deal has a price. Or maybe they were deceived too because they became prisoners of the underground and are unable to come out during the day or see sunlight. This brings up the most important question. How can the children be saved? You might say the solution is to go back to the past. Julie could potentially do this, but here lies the main flaw with time travel. If it has already happened, you cannot change it. However, creating a time loop, that's a different story entirely. Here's a simple example of a time loop. Julia managed to return to the moment when Boyd was trapped in the well. She threw him a rope, allowing him to climb out. Because of this, he met Martin, and Martin gave him the worms. This led to a new problem, the music box with the ballerina. When Ellis needed a blood transfusion, Boyd had no choice but to take a risk. He ventured out at night to pass the worms to Smiley, which unfortunately killed him. This act broke the monster's agreement with the main entity. As a result of Julia's time travel, Fatima became pregnant, and all the vegetables in the town either rotted or disappeared. These were consequences of meddling with time. However, after Smiley's autopsy, cicadas were released. They became the new problem, and the townsfolk couldn't sleep anymore. Anyone who did would die. Later, the cicadas found 3 people, entered their bodies, and split their physical forms and souls apart. These 3 souls became prisoners of that old place. Boyd had to act. He entered a building and destroyed the music box. Abby tried to stop Boyd, but she knew he wouldn't listen. After all this horror, Fatima's condition worsened. But she still didn't know that the woman in the kimono had already begun preparing Elgin for the mission to save Smiley. Elgin, in turn, began having delusions about an angel and succumbed to her influence. He made Fatima drink his blood, locked her in the cellar, and as a result, lost his eyes. Still, Fatima managed to give birth to Smiley, but remember what started it all? Julia threw down the rope. After that moment, Fatima became pregnant, which led to Smiley's eventual death. The origin point of everything is Julia's interference with time. If Boyd hadn't escaped, there wouldn't have been this loop. Moreover, it was the boy in white who sent Boyd to Martin. So, he already knew how everything would play out. For this reason, Julia couldn't save her father Jim. We see that the future version of Julia is trying to fix everything. She already knew where and when Jim would die, but she didn't know how or at whose hands, because she didn't yet know that it's impossible to change the past. What she can do instead is create everything, build a new time loop, and in the future, she will succeed. Do you remember the strange guy from the first episode? I kept thinking about his question. Don't you understand me? She definitely was in the past, since the guy remembered her, and he scratched her face pretty badly. Julia will try to leave clues, for example, in the lighthouse. Maybe the map in the van was her doing, not Miranda's. And the bottle tree with the notes, that could also be the work of other time travelers like Julia. But I have a question. Is this ability only hers, or can everyone who has come into contact with the cicadas now travel through time? If not, then the second such time traveler we know is Eloise, Victor's sister. Throughout the series, we see the connection between Ethan and Victor. The boy in white appeared to both of them because they are the children of the reincarnation of one soul, Marvin's and Tabitha's. So, Eloise is the past version of Julia, and she might have escaped in the time loop. It's no coincidence that Victor repeatedly told us that Eloise was very good at hiding. Also, we didn't see her death. Victor, near the distant tree, told Tabitha that he had found his mother nearby, and we saw how she died. But after I heard that Victor told his father Henry that he had found only some pieces of Eloise, and that Victor thought it was probably her, it becomes clear that his sister is definitely alive.
You said Eloise.
I think so. All I found were pieces.
One of the rules of cinema states that if a character's death isn't shown on screen, they are definitely alive. But then, where is she hiding? Could it be in the lighthouse, or is Eloise stuck somewhere in time? Of course not. The answer has always been right in front of us. Earlier, I wondered how Boyd managed to find the goat. It's clear that it was tied up somewhere before and it had a collar on, or who planted the vegetables by the lake. The place where monsters don't come is the strange little houses. They are probably scared of those protective scarecrows. And at night, Kenny and Jim heard strange noises. Who came to the settlement? If it had been one of the monsters, they would have definitely spoken. They always talk, every time. But here, there was silence. This was definitely a person, and they were very scared. Because Eloise hadn't met anyone alive in a long time. She's afraid and hides every time someone unknown approaches the little houses. Of course, there should be signs of her life around the houses, like a campfire or a bed. But don't forget, Eloise is a master at hide-and-seek, and she's been doing it for a long time. I think Eloise is very scared and afraid of interacting with strangers. Her mental state might even be worse than Victor's. And all the vegetables by the lake were planted by Eloise. Perhaps at one time, Victor's sister had goats, chickens, and cows. But something bad happened, and all the livestock ran into the forest. Boyd would later find them and bring them back to the town. Also, we remember that Victor's sister went to look for their mother. But when we saw Miranda's death and that she was alone, we can definitely say that Eloise couldn't find her. She also couldn't return to a safe place. The appearance of Victor's alive sister would have helped close all the gaps in the series. By the way, about the safe place that Christopher didn't know about. According to Victor, he and his mother and sister were hiding in a secret place that no one knew about. I thought it was strange at the time that Christopher didn't know about the existence of the cellar, which was just a stone's throw from the town. Now everything makes sense. Miranda and her children weren't hiding in the cellar itself, but in the room where Elgin was holding Fatima. That's why there are so many cans of peaches left there. But there's still one question. Who moved the wardrobe to hide the door? And who died inside this dreadful place? When Elgin first found the hidden room, he discovered the body of an unknown man on the floor. He had clearly been dead for a long time. I tried to trace all the residents of Fromville by their clothes, a shirt and jeans, and the jeans were clearly modern, no later than the 1960s. Such jeans could belong to anyone. Boyd and Jade had similar ones. And the shirt was similar to the one Tabitha wore, but judging by the placement of the pockets, it's not theirs. Plus, the corpse didn't have a wristwatch, and there was a beard. And then I remember Victor's words. After everyone in the town died, he couldn't find only Christopher's body. Perhaps in 1978, Christopher did find the secret spot, and Victor had no choice but to lock him there. Christopher was probably injured since he couldn't escape, and he survived for a long time by eating the leftover canned goods. Why a long time? because his beard had grown, but eventually he died. And Victor's mind probably chose to erase those memories. Before the Matthews family arrived, the door had already been hidden, and in 1978, it was the Victor family's secret spot. During this period, anyone could have moved the wardrobe, but it was probably Victor. Since after that terrible massacre in the town, he never saw Eloise again. His sister couldn't have closed the entrance. And Christopher disappeared in a miraculous way, and he is definitely dead, because Jade sees him as a ghost. I think the body in the room belongs to Christopher. If you have your own theory, leave it in the comments. Let's go back to time travel and Ethan's words. It seems this boy really understands how everything works, and he explains to his sister that she won't be able to change what has already happened. But Julia still doesn't understand how it works and will try to fix everything, which will eventually lead to all the tragedies. I think Julia will be the cause of all the problems. She doesn't know what she's doing, and perhaps in 1506, she will inadvertently prevent things and create Fromville. That would be the perfect series finale. One more thing we haven't discussed from the general story of child sacrifices is the tree roots. At one point, Sarah even asks Victor if it's possible that the distant tree is the one, but she didn't get an answer. And then I started recalling all the strange trees, what's lying on the road, all the trees with portals, the bottle tree, and I stopped at the most mysterious one, the spider house. This tree is covered in webs. I studied it in detail. There are no leaves on it, and the webs descend from top to bottom. And most importantly, it holds the soul of Boyd's wife, Abby. Perhaps after a person's death, this tree is capable of trapping souls. And that's why Father Catry and Abby come to Boyd, and the cheerful bartender comes to Jade. They mostly give correct advice and don't seem evil. It's just that their souls are trapped by the tree, and the spiders guard it from unwanted visitors. I think it was this tree that moved Sarah and Boyd's tent. But is this tree the one the boy in white is talking about? I don't think the creators of the show are foolish enough to show us the main tree and reveal the most interesting detail, but anything is possible. This is the end of the first part. In the second part, we will reveal even more secrets and mysteries that will make you reconsider everything you thought before. We'll learn more about the King in Yellow and his connection to the main cycle of events. What forces are behind the repeating cycles, and how do they influence our heroes? We'll dive deeper into the mystical myths that hide the true threats. What do the monsters really want, and how do they control everything that's happening? Don't miss it. The second part will bring unexpected twists and revelations that will leave you speechless. If you're into analyzing the series The Outside, definitely check out the Geekademy channel. You'll find in-depth and interesting breakdowns, intriguing theories, and fresh perspectives on the show. It's a great channel for anyone who wants to understand the series on a deeper level. Don't forget to support it and subscribe. Link in the description.